So yeah, first of all, I want to start off by saying awesome talk, Sarah. I thought that was really great for, showing kind of what product management is like, the gritty reality of trying to do this through these transformations. I'm going to take a very different tack to what Sarah was talking about. I think my experience in product management has been one of like the initial resistance, because product managers, like, we really hate this stuff at the start, and then we go through a little bit of a journey, and then we come out saying, oh my God, continuous delivery, how do we ever live without it? And so I want to talk a little bit about the kind of past, present, and future of what it means to be a product manager and do prioritization, do product management in this context. A little bit about myself. I am the portfolio manager for Redgate, so I manage the product managers now. I started off as a developer. I was a lousy developer. I was a total hacker, didn't know anything about quality or craftsmanship or anything. But the thing I most objected to in doing development was being told to develop really stupid stuff. So I switched over to product management and then kind of took it from there. What? Obviously. In terms of what Redgate does, what my company does, we sort of the very kind of modest tools for database developers. What we actually do is we make tools to enable DevOps for the database. So this is a kind of area that I, in terms of our products, have been really digging into. I will not talk about like Redgate, except as examples, not going there. But it's a whole area where with our customers, I've been kind of watching as these transformations have unfolded and seeing a lot of the kind of similar patterns that we've gone through. Other things about me, just so you know, like everything you need to know, I am a very keen cyclist and I'm very proud of my 2,000 miles, not including commutes this year. A bit of a quirky sense of humor. And the other thing you should know is that I really love Agile. Like, I love Agile. Scrum, not quite so much, but like Agile, I am a drum-thumping, card-carrying Agilista. I think that the Agile Manifesto is like the gift that keeps on giving. I think we've only begun to like start to interpret it in its deep, significant meaning. I think it's a document that's like, second only to the US Constitution and like slightly above the Magna Carta. So I really I'm so bought into this, having gone through like what things were like in the past. And I think particularly, this initial part about our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. And I know you guys focus a lot, I'm assuming you focus a lot on the continuous delivery part, which is right there in the Agile Manifesto. And so tonight I really want to talk about that value part, that valuable part, and how we actually marry those two things together. And a lot of you look, hate to say it, really young in here. And so I do want to talk a little bit about history of this and what things used to be like in the really bad old days. And I've brought along Stephen Hawking, who's another Cambridge resident, to help me talk about a brief history of value from Big Bang to black holes. And you'll recognize the Big Bang, like back in the really old days, in the dawn of time. We did releases that maybe took a year, 2 years to get out, and we wrote specs that looked like this. I'll read a little bit because you probably can't see it. Had memorable lines like, the process claim button shall be located near the bottom of the screen under all of the input fields. And we wrote this in words, and this happened after a project got put together because some product manager managed to lie about how much their line was going to go up ear and to the right ear than somebody else's line, and so a project got spun up to deliver a piece of software that then some analysts went away and unpicked in terms of all the requirements and all this, wrote these documents that we used to have war over. I mean, these were, the weaponized software development, what happened in these specs. And a lot of that was, well, not just around the words and how it was expressed, but also about the priority of the things within them. And so we had our musts, our shoulds, our coulds, and our, well, either woulds or won'ts, whichever way you choose to do it. And we argued about this to no end about which things were critical and all of that. And we always ended up stuffing the box because we knew we weren't going to get another chance at a release. And so we packed everything we could get in there. And then, of course, it all went wrong. And our customers who were meant to adopt it would wait for the point release. And then it got with Microsoft, when you were adopting Windows, major corporations went every other major version because they knew that the initial ones were so buggy. It was terrible. It was chaos. It was carnage. For those of you who are don't remember pre-Agile, it was awful. Come on, the people who are my age, I've been in IT for 24 years now. You guys remember this. I know you're with me. So, yes. Now, obviously, we got Agile. Things got better, right? They didn't get perfect with just Agile. We started doing these loops, of course, between this team, which produced software, showed it to the product owner then grooms the backlog, and we kind of had these nice cycles going up, which were infinitely better than what we had before. But we're not all the way there. And I think, most businesses today, when we look at like what Agile and even continuous delivery means, it's got these boundaries that don't go all the way out to the user and don't go all the way out. They have some more modest boundary about kind of where you're able to do your iteration. And so I hope you'll forgive me. I am sympathetic when I talk about like the black hole aspect of the current state of Agile. But, so we develop all this stuff and then we throw it out to the real users and then we never hear anything about it again. And so again, don't believe me when I say I'm sympathetic, but I think that there's this kind of this underlying featureitis to a lot of what we develop today, that we develop it in turn, we make our backlogs and think about our whole projects in terms of this breakdown into the user stories or features. And then, once something hits a real user, we kind of, we've got this information barrier between us and that kind of black hole. And we kind of might get the occasional, like, I don't know, positron, whatever they are, the half particles that come out. And we kind of try to guess at whether that was really successful. And, I'm not trying to say that this isn't a realistic response to the situation that we're in. It totally is. But it's definitely not what we should be aiming for and what we should be thinking about when we talk about doing product management in continuous delivery. We should recognize that we're like part way to a journey in many cases. And so when I look around and look at prioritization techniques, I think most of them are designed to really to take good care of black hole Agile, this thing where you have that boundary and it actually goes out somewhere else and you're actually prioritizing on these features, and like there's a lot of elaborate machinery. I was at Agile in Orlando, the big kind of Agile conference, and there was a huge amount out there about kind of prioritization, but on the assumption that you can't get really good information back from your users. And so that product owner proxy role is so critical. But again, like in a continuous delivery world, what does that actually become? So in terms of prioritization methods, these are the things I'm not going to talk a lot about because, all the stack ranking, scorecards, all these things, they're useful. I'm mentioning them because you might be saying, oh, actually, that's me. That's the best I'm ever going to do. And it's useful to be able to look up some of those prioritization techniques and understand them better. But that's not the be all and end all, because if we're looking at, what this really means about where this is all going, the businesses are going to get Agile too at some point. Maybe not all in every business is, but I think this is the trend that we're seeing. I think there's a kind of historical inevitability about this at this point, that Agile is about the business really. It happened to start in software, and luckily software is eating the world, so it's becoming much more significant. But as it extends to the business, I think we see that means different things for how we do our decision making. So the question is, what lies beyond the black hole? The next step, this sort of future there. I know, come oldies, come on, you're with me. And so I'm going to go back and talk about continuous delivery. And I'm going to start with what we all know, continuous delivery, about shortening cycle times. And so this is actually a sequence of thinking that Dave Farley took me through a couple of years ago, the author of the Continuous Delivery book. And I am eternally grateful for him for kind of contextualizing this for me. So, you got your developer and we're trying to shorten the cycle times on his machine to get feedback on the code, shorten the cycle times through continuous integration or through the next stage of that pipeline. And we always want to shrink that feedback cycle. And Dave's point, he said, yeah, this is all great. But honestly, we're not really getting the value out yet, now are we? Not until we actually take that all the way through production, real end users, and worry about that cycle time, about that business value thing. And so if you look at each one of those as being an inner hypothesis of, it's going to pass these tests, it's going to succeed at this. Well, what we actually need to do is test that business level hypothesis when it comes to sort of what he sees as being the be all and end all of continuous delivery. And again, I think this is where it's going. I think in many cases, not every case, but in many cases which can, there's a real business advantage to thinking like this and starting to shorten the cycle time all the way out through to your user. And so prioritization in this context becomes way less about scheduling work and feature this and all that, and much more about actually picking and solving the high value business problems. So it's not about ordering and all that, because that kind of presupposes that you've done a really good breakdown and what that user value is going to be. And one of the things that I think a lot of these web startups and all the rest have discovered is that you might think you know what user value is, but there's an awful lot of the time that you're wrong. There was a statistic quoted by Skyscanner, which they said that 80% of their features actually failed at their business objectives, and so they hoiked them out again. But if they had, like, imagine a few years ago and you told somebody, hey, do you think, what percentage of your features do you think don't deliver on their business value? Nobody would have told you 80%. Everybody would have been saying, oh, we think it's mostly good. Yeah, it's doing the thing. It's mostly good. And so this newfound humility and this newfound understanding about like how often it fails means that we have to get really good at actually validating that whole value loop and about selecting what those high value problems are. So back to this again. So when we think about shrinking this, we think that, like, if we're trying to bring this in, what does that actually lead to? What are the bottlenecks? And product management, in the way I think we traditionally conceive of it, is very much a bottleneck in this. And one thing that we've found, so at Redgate, we've been kind of going through trying to shorten, and we found that, you need to start making sure that development teams are very, very, very aware of their business context. Otherwise, you end up, that whole loop gets much longer if you're actually having to go outside of that team unit, which can act somewhat autonomously. And so that's one thing that we found, that we actually, it's a recasting of roles so that more developers and more development teams have much deeper understanding of the problem than I think they had to in sort of more traditional Agile. I've put this up there, this thing, because I was looking at, like, okay, all the prioritization systems, I just want to know what everything out there is. Found this very handy thing from a website called Folding Burritos, but the dude is actually a product management dude. He knows what he's talking about. And I include this again because if you want to kind of have a place where you can say, okay, what are all my options for this? I went and looked through them. I went and looked through all of these, and actually I don't know, I've been studying prioritization methods. I don't know any that aren't on here. And the interesting thing about this is I was asking of this sort of set of prioritization systems, which of these is still applicable if you're not doing features? If you are actually taking business problems instead, which of these is still relevant? Any guesses? How many? It's actually not quite so bad, because some of them are agnostic, right? So some of these are basically like, well, you put post-its down and then you agree in interpretation. It's like, okay, that can apply to a business problem too. But essentially, like, I think the really key ones up here, again, I'm sorry for the small text, but there's one that he calls the Ian McAllister framework, which I call common sense, and another one about business goals. And those are the ones which really, take that business problem thing and put those as the primary object of your Agile of your DevOps projects. Projects is the wrong word. Programs of work. So I want to talk about some of the principles of prioritization in this context. So, obviously, what is prioritization for? Well, the whole point is to maximize the impact of the work that's done. You want to choose the work that's going to have the biggest business impact. So that's still the goal. That was always the goal in the old days. We always wanted to maximize the bang for the buck. The difference now is that, like, we're looking at something which is outcome focused instead of a user story and simply like, can a user achieve this task? And then going back to what Sarah was saying, we're doing everything we can to break those down into thin slices. And when I say meaningful, like, that has to be a slice that a user can actually use that will tell you something about how that system is going to behave. So those are the principles of what we're looking for in a prioritization system. And I think there isn't one way to do this, but I'll talk about kind of a flow that we use, which is actually quite generic. So in some ways, it's like almost an abstract version of what you could use to identify business goals, to prioritize them, and to actually get your work done. We are very into objectives and key results. Something that came out of Google a few years back, and it's a way of trying to take away, trying to get away from we're delivering these features as fast as we can to what are we actually trying, what is the objective of this work, and how are we going to judge its success? And the thing this reframing does is it puts like a bunch of the problem solving back inside development teams. So this presupposes you have a bunch of developers who are up for this, and there's always I don't know, in the transition, this can be hard because a feature and being told what to do can be really, really seductive. So actually getting everyone bought into this transformation, it's challenging to do that. The thing that we arrived at through this is that we actually had to, we started off with OKRs, but we didn't start off doing the user research that involved the whole team, that actually gave teams the ability to start taking these decisions and helping contribute to these judgments internally. So started off with OKRs, but then had to back work and get a bunch of that user research being done directly by a whole team to inform it. And then market research. So product manager then, is no longer there like maintaining a backlog and sort of assessing the exact business value of feature to feature, but instead kind of trying to supply market context into a team and make sure that they're really well informed to take decisions semi-autonomously. And the flow that we went through is, first of all, we agree a team purpose. What is this team even for? And for many of us, for our products and our business, they're sort of relatively small, like a product has a smallish boundary. And so many of them, a team can be for, like, make the best business value out of this product. Like that is a reasonable thing for our business. But then together, a product manager and a team generate ideas for objectives. And this can be based on just things they've observed. There are techniques like how might we encourage users to use the software more? How might we become more appealing to the DevOps persona? How might we? And a bunch of questions like that. And then these are selected based on the purpose. What is that team actually for? What is the current? What are the priorities of the company? And what the business impact is, and a bunch of other factors that go into selecting those as well. I mean, it turns out that like cost of delay, I don't know if that's a phrase any of you are familiar with, but product managers are kind of into it right now. But things which are much more valuable now than they will be in the future, those also get a little bit more of a thing. So we do a bunch of sort of joint projects with Microsoft, and if they're ready to work with us, then they're like, we're doing it. So cost of delay will also impact on those judgments. So we'll select those things based on what we understand about the market context and the user's problems. We'll agree those key results, and then we use what is called a double diamond model. This is something which has come out of design circles to kind of understand and define the problem first. So it's understand as a sort of fanning out of options. We're trying to understand and look at options, and then defining really closing down what is that problem we're trying to solve, and then exploring that problem and creating a solution. So it's just something you can look up if you're looking for kind of ways of approaching problems that are kind of taking business value in a different way. And the teams then within that, once they have their, so some of them will be using hypotheses as their first class object. Rather than like a feature, they'll have something they're trying to validate, a thing they're trying to get more information on, a thing they're trying to prove as being one of the, what you'll see on their whiteboards. And then work is managed in terms of, okay, what is the thing blocking us being able to get that piece of value out? And so a completely different flow, a different mindset of how that team goes about doing their job. But in the end, they end up being able to say, this thing we did, that actually satisfied a real business goal, and not just we supplied features which users may or may not use and may or may not make the product any better. So an example of this, because I know it's all been quite abstract so far. So we have one product which has lots of kind of almost sub-products within it. It's a collection of capabilities. And so, the objective for a team might be something like increase the average number of features that this product's users use. So we don't want them to use one of these sub-things, we want them to use a bunch of them. Why? Well, the company strategy says reduce churn, please. We don't want more people renewing our software. We have good evidence that feature usage correlates with retention, and we have evidence also that there's a problem with discoverability of our stuff. So we think this is actually a valuable area. We think this is an area where we can have a really big impact. And then the key results kind of fall out quite naturally. We know what the average usage is. We want to up it for 2 constituent user groups. And so a team might be working at this level instead. So first of all, they set their objective as the top level thing about what they're trying to achieve. For us, these are kind of 3-month things, although if they complete it sooner or one is just completely failing to make any traction, then that can get reset. But that's roughly how we're doing it to try to get to teams solving those business problems. But wait! What about work on your pipeline? So all of this is, business value, and it leaves open the question of how a team is actually doing that underlying work, which is not directly related to that outcome that they are, they've set in their objective. And this has been a real question for us. And I've looked, talked to other people doing it, maybe their views on how the best way to manage this in this room. I think what we found is that there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. So I've seen a bunch of different things work for how you actually fit in that pipeline and infrastructure work with your business value work. One of them is make a business case, and this is, Kent Beck, by the way, you should read everything Kent Beck says, because this will also, on this subject and on a bunch of stuff about life cycle stages, is really great. But I'm not sure I agree with him on this particular point, however, because remember, premise number one, product managers hate this stuff, and they are, geared to try to protect the business value against development faff and bullshit and like navel gazing and stuff, right? And they often, when they haven't experienced this, see this as being just another one of those things that developers want to try out some new toys, but come on, guys, grow up, right? And so if you're trying to make a business case and go up against a product manager who hates it, like, I haven't seen that win yet. So I get the premise there about trying to make that case to the business about the value of faster cycle times. But like I say, I think that maybe it's part of a two-pronged attack, and try to do that in other ways as well. So other things that I've seen tried and work, the sort of ratchet effect that we're always going to improve it. So wherever we're at, we're going to take another step. Whatever our granularity planning is, we're going to make sure we're always inserting some pipeline work. So similarly, you could ring fence time. The thing I like, though, as a product manager, kind of who gets the value of it at this point and sees, faster cycle time. That means I can test my business value. Yay, more value to customers. I really like it when the team just defines that as part of their inspect and adapt part of Agile. So when they're just improving that as part of the way they work. So similarly, I wouldn't say that they needed to ask for time from me as a product manager for their retrospectives, right? That's just how they work. They're trying to identify issues and improve them. And I really like when a team will simply say, we got this, we will understand when this is important enough. We will understand when we got this. And that it doesn't come up against the sort of business value feature work. It takes quite a mature team to get to the point where they'll do that, but that's sort of my preference. So in summary, I know sort of a whistle-stop tour of like fantasy future for hopefully not too many, hopefully on the doorstep of many of you. So prioritization for, Big Bang, for, when we're in waterfall, we use these requirements to express the sort of, and rank the importance of all of our work. Once we got to sort of regular Agile, then we have lots of techniques for ordering features and for doing things in sensible order. Some of which will simply be sort of value-based, some of which bring in risk, and there's actually a lot of good, like, technical machinery out there. If you want to read in this, there's very, very rich literature about it. But for continuous delivery, if you're really going for this, then you need to recognize that business hypothesis, that outer loop, as being the thing to squeeze in. And in many cases, then it removes the translation of business goal into sort of feature, and sort of takes out that, at least from the product manager, takes out that sort of slicing into prioritizable feature, because we're talking about a problem. And yes, you're looking for the cheapest, smallest ways to solve a problem, but you're not necessarily doing that as feature, trying to decompose a larger piece of work. And I think, we're seeing a lot more of these design-led techniques to identify the highest value problems to solve. And design-led doesn't mean that it's not applicable in sort of larger business context. I think some of the stuff that's coming out of design thinking, systems thinking, all of that is really, really relevant and really great. And so that helps give lots of techniques for identifying the boundaries of whole problems, considering whole systems, and solving really difficult stuff. I think we're seeing a move away from kind of quantified techniques and prioritization at the moment into these qualitative things a bit more. I suspect we're going to get more back to the quantified things. But, again, I think this is sort of where we're at and where we're seeing things going. And I would love to see whether this has landed at all. Thank you very much. Yeah, please. Or even just, I don't think so.
Yeah, I've got a question for you, which is quite interesting. It's all about, having the feedback from the customers, from the ultimate customer. So in your case, how do you get feedback from potentially the developer that is using these new tools? How do you get that?
So first of all, even though we're installed software, we have lots of telemetry in there. So we'll be getting kind of information back on usage patterns and sort of what workflows succeed and all of that. We phone them up, we visit them, we kind of everything you can imagine almost to try to get that back from them. That does present its own challenges, because we find that, how to put it, like people in like big finance businesses don't really want to get involved in like user research BS, right? And so we find that there's a whole category of people that are really well served by our research methods, and a whole category of people that we really have to work to get. But luckily, if they want something from us, like they want capabilities, they're often willing to give back and help us design those capabilities. So we have a whole bunch of techniques that are kind of constantly ongoing. Just as a side note, we had to add in some research support, like somebody to actually help with the admin of this for our development teams, because they were actually basically willing to turn up to the calls, to listen, to participate, and all of that. It took some work, but we got there. The thing they were not willing to do is like actually, hi, I'm from Redgate Software. Would you like to like just drew the line there? But yeah, we have found users to be quite open to that. Yeah.
Thanks. That was a really interesting presentation. Thanks. I'm kind of curious if you folks have built up any guidelines or practices about choosing your objectives and your key results, because for us, we try and practice this internally, and sometimes you'll say like, okay, you want to achieve, like this amount of conversion, and like conversion is tied to like a 30-day cycle or something, and then in the beginning, like the first month of the quarter, it's kind of like, well, we're not really sure what's going on, and then kind of like midway to the end, you're like, oh crap, this is not actually having the effect we wanted, and like tying it's quite well, like being able to validate some of these things quite quickly as small teams, but trying to pull it all together is quite difficult, and measuring it along the way.
Yes, and there's a lot that's really hard in there. By the way, I mean, if you're even to the part where that's an issue, then you've got past the number one thing which seems to go wrong with objectives, which is like, objective, to ship a static analysis feature. Key result, we shipped it. It's like, no, you missed the whole point. So if you're at least at that point, I think that's really good. For us, we've also found that some of that information can be quite slow to come back in. And so we've ended up almost sort of slicing efforts. So we'll have different experiments running over different periods of time. So we might have 2 or 3 objectives in a quarter. And we actually, they'll end up doing some work on one and then just needing to let it cook for a little bit because we just don't know what the effects are yet. Proxy metrics wherever possible. So yeah, I think that that's an area which is rich for kind of additional machinery to be developed to help us think about it. But I would agree that it's all very simple when you have like 1 million people using your software every day. And for the rest of us, you have to be more measured about your conclusions, about looking for proxy metrics, about all of that. So I'm not sure if that's tips or advice more than sympathy. Yeah. Yeah.
To what extent does to what level of granularity in terms of business value are we sort of bringing into the OKR process? So do we sort of unburden? Yes, the product manager no longer makes the call on prioritization alone, but what about the CEO? Like, how far does it radiate up that the team is self-organizing around objectives?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that so far we're seeing a direction of travel, and we don't know yet where it's going to stop. And just a quick tangent to that question, I will try to come back to it. But product managers, the funny thing is that like I'm recruiting, by the way, if anyone wants to join, and the product managers absolutely love this. So where there was continuous delivery, we're not so sure about it. When you tell them you don't have to groom backlogs and you get to be more strategic, they're like, I'm in. So in terms of sort of starting at a particular place which is comfortable for your organization and then moving in a direction, I think that's probably the thing to aim for. I don't know yet where it stops. I suspect that there is a natural stopping point based on just the ability of a team to take in information and inputs from everywhere. But I haven't seen it yet, so we'll keep going in that direction of travel. Yeah.
Quick one. Way back in the slides, you talked about the market research and then sharing that with the team.
Yeah.
I was wondering, is that stuff that the product managers were doing anyway, but not sharing, or is it something that's slightly on board? And
that. So I mean, product managers, I think they were a little bit like And the funny thing is that I think they were kind of saying, I don't think they're interested. Mine. I don't think that's mine. And yeah, so there was a lot of that going on, and where it was sort of shared like, okay, here's a stack of market research you want to passive aggressively. You can look at it if you want to. And like not actually making it accessible to a dev team, not helping them contextualize it, not, kind of doing that job. So yeah. In true Agile practice, just working together a little bit better has worked. And I guess the other thing about teams is that I think at the beginning, they kind of didn't know which things they needed to know and felt that. And again, they start to get more curious, more interested. And so as you tend to do that, it's just built up. Yeah.
It sounds awesome when you're like building new stuff.
Yeah.
Have you come across any of these things when you're rebuilding old legacy systems? And have you seen it work in like a rebuilding a legacy system way?
So I have not in a long time gone through a straight up legacy rebuilding thing. There's always been some thing you're looking for, to get from the business benefit from going for it. We have a thing that's going on right now that's like that. And I guess I don't yet know how it's going to pan out, but what they're doing is that, or they're trying to do, is trying to kind of take those, translate by use cases, and so not do a straight up rebuild, but actually try to take those key things and reinterpret them. And again, I don't know, it might just be that's kind of a lot of wasted work, because actually it was basically right in the past, and what it actually needed was a simple refactor. And just put your tests in place, take it chunk by chunk, do the best practice stuff. So I don't know yet, but I look forward to talking in a year about refactoring in a continuous delivery product management situation. Yeah.
Yeah. Another question again. Are you delivering or deploying your software as a service, or is it something that you install at customers? Because the problem I've got is that we deliver our software to another business, and they own the relationship with the customers, which could be any of us, and they're very reluctant to take any feature until it's fully developed, that we've tested it to death, and that we know that it's going to deliver value. So it's difficult for us to do tests, or not just call it tests, but try to gauge the interest from users for the features.
Yeah, I think there's a really interesting kind of business discussion there about what does reducing cycle time mean in that case, and what is even feasible in that context. Because I think there are places where you'll reduce, and that's it. That's all you got. Our software, in answer to your question, is actually installed on customers' sites, but they can sort of self-serve their updates. Some of that is gated by their own IT departments, who obviously will, But so one of the things in reducing our cycle time is trying to maximize uptake of new versions. And so it's actually really funny, because marketing is a really key player in our reduction of cycle time, because we'll do everything we can in the product to say, upgrade, look, you really want this. But sometimes it just takes like an email a campaign to try to get them to do it. So yes, in terms of our goals, like the OKR that was up there for that, like we end up having to just take of the latest version and people who are the upgraders, and taking a subset of people to be looking at, because if we look at absolutely everybody, the effects are minimal, and there's nothing. Yeah, there's just nothing we can do. So yeah. Oh, come on, somebody asked another question. I can't answer, yeah.
Last one. In the previous slide to this one, you define the activities that the product manager does with the team. And then at some point, you say number 4, then the team on their own. They go, they define, explore, understand, and create whatever is needed.
And we're often interested, but as far as we're concerned, once we've done this, then we have to take our hands off. Right, like there's a kind of autonomy bargain there where, obviously we can step in as a business and say, whoa, completely wrong. But that's the idea. We're interested stakeholders, we advise where we can, but yeah.
Do you end up having a product owner type of person in the team?
We don't. We have UX plays a strong role in that. So UX per team, although they are more facilitators than they are kind of product owners, kind of decision makers on that. And that is working really well for us on that. We have, again, that sort of double diamond model has been rolled out, kind of standardized, that's what they'll use. So yeah, like I say, I think that's been working really well. But yeah, I think they feel almost strategically undervalued, whereas in fact, they, as you have just spotted, they have this massive role in defining our products and the directions.
Have you always been taking the teams and letting them come up with objectives, or have you been kind of forming teams around what's the way? Because I've seen that work not so successfully when teams are already there, because teams are bad at trimming down themselves. For example, they got the wrong mix of people, etc. So
yeah. So the first time we tried to do it, we tried to kind of set to them objectives, and that was terrible. Turns out they need to be involved in objective formation. Who knew? Yeah, okay, shut up. Just because we're not as smart as you. So, sorry, in terms of then working with them to set them, so the specific question about how that's worked in terms of...
Have you been creating teams and then like finding objectives for them, or have you been kind of saying, there's this business objective, we'll start like how we assemble teams around those?
Yeah, so what we've actually been doing is resourcing a whole area in terms of number of teams, and then kind of give them an approximate remit, like we'd like you to be looking at this aspect of the, the sort of story and that aspect of the story, and kind of do a first level decomposition, which is very much informed by kind of their experiences in the previous time. So the sort of half yearly cycle will reassess the number of teams and kind of rough zones that they sit in terms of our product set. And then within that, once they have a purpose, then the product manager will work with the team on that objective. So it's not objective setting first and then drawing the teams to it. It's kind of, we have a purpose for what you're meant to accomplish. We have a bunch of things the company's trying to achieve. And then how can you do that? Now, product manager has a pretty strong voice in that conversation, but luckily, I mean, it hasn't been this kind of voice, but the key people about a tech lead and a product manager who can, if they both agree and they both, manage a productive discussion around it, then that's been kind of good enough. Yeah, and actually one thing that's helped us enormously has been an Agile coach in this. Our objectives got better and better and better with an Agile coach to kind of appropriately challenge and keep pressing on it and keep, because it's very easy to get lazy. Again, features are very comfortable ways of thinking, and you think you know what you're going to do, and so you just want to get over this stupid thing where you're having to set the objectives. And in order to get past that, that's been just incredibly valuable.
One more question, if we've got one.
Yes.
What do you,
Two more questions?
How frequently do you come across like bad objectives or key results like halfway through and you're just like, this was just bad, are we going to write it off or are we just going to carry on?
Yeah, it definitely happens. And I would say about the frequency with which we've had to abort a sprint, sort of it's pretty unusual. It's something fairly dramatic has to happen or new information comes in. So it's actually been more often because of new information. Microsoft just released the entirety of what you were developing. All right, we're out. That kind of thing. And occasionally it's because, you're going towards the key results and it's just not getting you anywhere. You thought it was going to be massive as nothing, and but infrequently. But yeah, definitely does happen.
So my question was going to be around key results, objectives and key results as well. How frequently, and you may have already answered this one, sorry, but how frequently do you reset or update your OKRs for the team? So
we do this at a sort of 3 monthly, so quarterly kind of cadence. Again, unless it expires for some other reason, at which point we'll do it a bit sooner, and then maybe it was just before the quarter boundary, so it'll go a bit longer. So, and some things which where an objective really is still completely valid, they're showing good progress, and we may just all look at it and go, yep, more of that, please. But it gets reviewed at least on a quarterly basis.
And are they fully cascading right from the top of Redgate all the way down?
It's a really good question. We tried the cascading thing, and that actually was not great. And I think the reason is that so much information sits at the so-called bottom that it's much better for the company level, set an intent and a strategic direction, and these are the aspirations, this is what we value, and then go straight down to what how those teams say, I know what we can do to help with that. And going through a kind of divisional level, and that was actually not great, but setting a general direction and then letting that bubble back up, and possibly using a middle level to express objectives as collection, but still the real meat was happening, and the real chunky part was happening.
Were you finding then that a lot of energy was being put in trying to align them, when in reality you just get a lot more value out of just going ahead and doing them?
We didn't try very hard. I mean, yeah, and it's not. It wasn't the aligning them, because we haven't found yet that they've got way out of alignment. As long as we have those kind of, good communication between them, a solid direction at the so-called top. So yeah, but we scrapped that fairly early. It really didn't work very well.
Good call.
How many people are you?
Oh, we're about 250 people. Yeah.
How many would you say layers there are between that bottom and the top?
5 layers. Yeah. And yeah, it's very unusual for the CEO to kind of come swinging in on this kind of subject, but he loves to kind of watch it and challenge it and all that kind of thing.
Great.
Thank you. I'll wait, one more. Stuffing the box.
Snuck in at the end. How do you find, have you had any experience with alternatives like lean value tree or anything like that, and how do you find it?
So I don't know about I know about the tree you prune. I can't remember the name of it. There's a thing for that. How have I found it in comparison to other things we've tried? We haven't tried. I don't think we've tried anything as hard as this. We had a couple of kind of in small places attempts at various things, but this worked really well for us fairly quickly. So, yeah, I wouldn't say we haven't had a meaningful attempt in a different way. Right now, thank you very much. It's been a great evening. Thank you, Matt.